You still have to create the content in your own voice and your own thought leadership, because otherwise it's going to come across very mundane, very vanilla, and very traditional or cliche. But the way I'm describing it, and I think you'd probably agree with the SEO side, it'll rank higher if it has that authentic voice and the context is correct and the content is original and true thought. So if you can do that, you can use AI to accelerate. But if you're just trying to use AI to write it to drive traffic to a site, sure, it's going to work. But if you're trying to raise your thought leadership or your executive eminence brand, it will not work by itself for that. You'll still have some work to do.
Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. This is episode 98. You know, we always like to talk marketing, all kinds of marketing, different approaches, and every agency, every person we talk to has a particular approach. And where I really like it when people get creative and merge technology with the human element, as we do here at SEO Leverage as well, where we have our consultants, we have our machine learning software. So today, I'm very glad to have Thomas Helfrich with me. He's the founder of InstantlyRelevant.com and is going to talk about a very particular way of doing marketing over there. Thank you very much, Thomas, for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Whenever I can talk marketing and fun things we're doing, I take the opportunity, but I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So am I. So obviously over at InstantlyRelevant.com, you have found your way of helping clients with marketing. What I really like is the technology aspect of it, where it's okay, there are ways where technology can actually be leveraged and give you a competitive advantage, or it's just pretty much almost maybe standard these days already. But you also have found a lot of ways where you really need this human element in and have a human make the important decisions. But before we dive in there, I would really like to ask you to present yourself a couple of minutes. What should people know about you so they take everything else that's coming really seriously?
I appreciate that. So Thomas Helfrich, I always say I'm the double, maybe triple secret marketing weapon for founders and entrepreneurs and startups. My background is professional consulting, big four type of piece, but in the last 10 years specifically, really landed into intelligent automation and AI innovation systems. And the reason that's important is because I applied those principles of automation where you automate a process as much as you can with the intent to accelerate a human, not replace. It's a slightly different point of view than what I think a lot of times the marketing for automation companies do is, less jobs, things like that. The reality is with powerful technology, you need to have it human led, but you can leverage technology to accelerate process and improve outputs, consistency, give you a competitive edge if you do it correctly. So I took that idea and those methods and principles and applied it to creating content and managing social media and doing outreach and sales development. The reason is because I saw that as one of the slowest, most ineffective, costly, time, labor-intensive practices in any company that I did consulting for ever. It was always the thing that took the longest to write an article, to get it published, to then follow the leads. I was like, there has to be a better way. There are plenty of technologies to accelerate this. A couple of years ago, launched the notion of leveraging technology with human-led content development, social media management, and outreach for sales development. We get into the details of how, but that's been the core of it, and why it's a big differentiator for us is that we know how to use technology with humans, and the right tech, the right human in the right moment does wonders for accelerating and for output.
Absolutely. I really like this. There are a lot of points we're going to discuss a little bit more in detail. My clients definitely know how we do this here, where I try also leverage AI, machine learning wherever possible in order to just speed things up. I always tell my clients a story when usually in SEO, we try to present content in a way that Google really wants to rank. So there's a research part where it's like, okay, what is it that Google is ranking right now? And let's try to put something up that's aligned, but obviously our version of it. And I used to do this with handwritten notes years ago. So I went through the top 10, top 20, top 30 search results, made a lot of notes. What do they have in common? What do they talk about? Terminology that comes up all the time. So just really trying to figure out what is it that Google is looking for, and then went on and created a piece of content. Whereas today we have a lot of AI tools. I feel like every day a new content creation AI tool comes up. All obviously seem to be plugging into OpenAI at some point. But it's really interesting how people now approach this, and it's just baked into the daily process to have AI help you make decisions. In our case, it can still be a write-up, but they at least have AI inform them on what are those common denominators that we would have researched before. And it's like exactly like you said, it's an accelerated process. So we don't spend hours and hours researching anymore. We have a machine do this number crunching essentially for us, create relevance tables and things like those, and then create content is already set up for success. I wonder what kind of pain points or what kind of issues do you see with how people are creating content usually when you consult with a client?
Yeah. So our customers, we have the same time suck and financial sinkhole of traditional cliche marketing. One of the challenges with AI writing, and we use more AI than just for the GPT writing piece. We have our own access, but what we find is when you're using GPT-3 specifically in your writing, one of the problems is that they all do it a little daily different. So some do long form better, or longer form, I would say long form better than others. Some do short form, some do SEO titling better. So knowing which technology to use is a challenge, and why often I think a lot of people who leverage these AI technologies feel it's very novel and it leaves them wanting, is because you're not going to go buy every one on the lease, go rent the services of each one. We do. So when we have clients come in, right, we're leveraging, 15, 20 different technologies. The funny thing is, by knowing, no client actually cares. They only care about getting good content, good social media engagement, and getting leads. They don't care how you do it, but they do care about price points. They care about the value, the volume, the quality, which is what technology enables, which I think is a key piece. But I think when you're using these technologies, you have to watch out to avoid that traditional cliches. It's going to take things from the internet, and it's going to look at things from the research and what it knows. And a lot of those things are written, like you said, for SEO, but SEO can become incredibly cliche because you're looking for specific words that have the same meanings. And it really, what happens is, if you're writing this content, sometimes you'll cliche yourself to death and it'll just fall flat. The ideas that we try to do with this, well, I think it's slightly different. And it also brings in the audience of people who just don't think that the AI can capture their thought leadership, which it won't, is use it to create an outline, use it to create the topics and the bigger problems or the bigger talking points that you need to discuss, and then put your own thought into it. Now, you can use other technologies if you hate writing like I do to get in there. That could be some voice to text, some Otter, some interview style stuff, but you still have to create the content in your own voice and your own thought leadership, because otherwise it's going to come across very mundane, very vanilla, and very traditional or cliche. But the way I'm describing it, and I think you'd probably agree with the SEO side, it'll rank higher if it has that authentic voice and the context is correct and the content is original and true thought. So if you can do that, you can use AI to accelerate. But if you're just trying to use AI to write it to drive traffic to a site, sure, it's going to work. But if you're trying to raise your thought leadership or your executive eminence brand, it will not work by itself for that. You'll still have some work to do.
It's definitely interesting. And for me, it's always a question of how sustainable AI writing is going to be. So we always try to see SEO as a long-term investment. I'm really curious what Google is going to do with the growing amount. I mean, it's exponentially growing, the AI content that's out there, be it images, videos, like the deep fake video style where you can pretty much have everybody say everything. We are now using Descript, where we can edit my own voice when I get the number wrong on a podcast recording, etc. So this makes you just think where this all is going to go. Google obviously is against AI content, makes sense. However, it doesn't seem to be a trend that's going to stop. So what we try to inform clients about is really just to use AI really for this first draft, but then make this your own. We're in touch with content agencies, for example, that say they don't hire junior writers anymore, because the AI puts this junior writer piece pretty much together. And then you have an experienced editor or writer go through this and really adapt this. So I do think that the low-level writing is coming to an end, at least in my experience. But definitely AI texts, I can just see that it's going to create a really big problem. So in the moment when I can come up with a click of a button with 200 pages or 200 articles cite about cancer treatment, and I have no idea about it, I think it's going to create an issue that Google is going to have to tackle somehow.
Could not agree more with you. So I think the reason, so when we started off as a company, we started off as an AI company. It's not that it's not sustainable. It's just an accelerating technology, and it's transforming, but it's not a replacement of human technology. It's not a machine. You're still talking to humans to some degree. And if you're only focusing on the SEO piece, do great for ranking, but then you're going to fall, your brand falls. It does nothing for your brand, personal or company brand, to continually to do that. But it can be leveraged to discover things you didn't know and trends and et cetera out there. I agree with you. So I think at some point it has to be addressed, and how it's addressed is going to be, that'll be a whole other set of technologies to say, hey, is this mostly written by AI or not? Because there's no way they're going to create a standard that says every time it's written, it's deposited into yet another depository that this was an AI written article. It's going to be tricky. Or it may just go back the other way, where the whole nature of the content, where everyone thought the phones would get smaller and smaller, they eventually got bigger, right? And so maybe the whole technology switches gears where, that's your brand, is we don't use AI to write. Like it goes so far, like we're just humans. Like, oh, we like that better. I think it'll be obvious. I think at some point it'll be obvious what's what, and it's a big problem. I mean, you could have an AI just take over your video at any point, right? Like that? Oh my. If you're watching the podcast, an AI just took over my face. Anyway, I think you make a great point here. So I think, is it sustainable? Yeah, it's going to be, but it's going to have, I don't want to call regulation. It's going to have some kind of boundaries or guides on it to be of value long term.
It's definitely something where we do know that there are algorithms to figure out if a text was mainly written by an AI, because they just try to calculate if the next word is the most likely word that was going to follow based on math. And it's like, if this happens too often, it's probably a machine writing this. So there are algorithms. I always advise people to at least be careful with AI content and maybe use this with care on a side project or something you don't care too much about. What we care about is ultimately, like our clients, about conversions. And conversions very often happen when this human element is really, really strong, where you can just tell based on the content, based on how the site is made, based on this lead magnet, there was a human being fully understanding a pain point and adjusting or prescribing the solution, explaining exactly, taking the reader by their hand and walking them through the solution or to a possible solution. And this is when conversions happen. I want to pivot a little bit from content creation into other areas of marketing. So you obviously use AI and technology every single day in all kinds of areas. When it comes to, for example, building an audience on social media, what kind of strategies or technology would come to mind?
That's a common topic, and I'll lead with the idea that vanity is insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So chasing the ideas of views and followers and using that as the metric that matters is a very poor one, even if you're trying to be an influencer. Because if you're just getting a bunch of junk following or bot followers or whatever, it looks cool, but it's not going to produce any money for you. And if you're getting paid to post or you're going down that route, like your engagement's not going to be great, or you're going to be paying for engagement. The better notion is to be really specific on, let's say, just start like with the next 100 people you think you need to meet and make sure you connected with them on some type of authentic level. And then that next 100 will produce maybe 10 each and you're on to your next 1,000, right? And build it in this really thoughtful, authentic way, but be somewhat aggressive with it in a giving way. So be overly aggressive, giving away information, helping others. I built a pretty good network on LinkedIn, and a lot of it in the last 2 years, because in any meeting, if people are going to be our customer or not, I always ask, who can I meet? Who can I connect you with? And even if I can't, or they don't really know, or even if I can, they remember that. And people remember that because I authentically wanted them to connect somebody else. That's the whole point of networking and having a network, is helping others meet other people they need to. And when you truly give and truly try to help people connect with others, your network will become stronger and more trusting of you because you didn't ask for anything, you only gave. And try to give at least 3 times. That could be a comment. That could be, hey, there's a connection you might like. This is a conference you should attend. And you may never have met or talked to this person. It's better than the endless sales messages we get online of, hey, I know this. And it's like, man, like, stop automating your reach out to me, or at least get more creative with it.
It definitely, I think it got a little bit crazy with Messenger, Facebook Messenger and LinkedIn. I don't know how many people I block as spammers every single day on both platforms, because there was a guy, and I forgot his name. I wish I could credit him on LinkedIn. He called this value vomit. And this was interesting because he pretty much was challenging or addressing this outreach, and first message is already like a PDF document people just send over. If you want it or not, I just give you this, I vomit the value all over you. And now you need to be happy and we need to have a great business relationship. I always wonder how you approach it. So I always had clients come to me when I was in 20 years. We never were too aggressive in sales. We were always trying to build content, be found when people want to solve a problem and come to us. But I do recognize obviously the value in proactively connecting, but I always wonder when the right time is to actually give, like you say.
Well, it's all the time. So you should always be trying to add value to a relationship, in your personal or business for that matter. We all fall short typically on our personal sides, quite honestly. But on the business side, you should always be giving. And the idea is if the other person you're with subscribes to that or sees the value of it, they usually be like, how can I help you? And you'd be like, what are you doing with your marketing, or what are you doing with your consulting, or whatever, at some point, then you can introduce and they're like, yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. Because I've had meetings where we don't talk about ourselves for 3 or 4 times. They're like, hey, what is it you do? Like,
right.
Oh, let me explain now. Thanks for asking. I think it's all the time giving. The value vomit, throw it all on the wall and see what sticks. That whole piece. You're so right. I give your listeners a tip that does work if you are using automated reach out. That we've used plenty of automated reach outs. I only write, tell me more about, and their company name. That's it. And you'd be surprised the connection rate and how people go right back. But here's the thing, there's no automation after it. If someone replies back or accepts it, Really, I do mean it. Like, tell me more about your company. It seems that the name's interesting. Or at that point, a human jumps in once again, right? But the initial, like, just like, ooh, maybe misspell a word in it, like, use the letter R instead of are you doing something? Those kind of things really, if you can be connecting at mass scale, but in a way that you're going to pick it up as soon as they accept, that I'm all for that. But if you're doing, hey, nice, I endorsed you, this, and then, hey, by the way, here's a 14,000 character LinkedIn message with 16 links in it and a PDF, and say, when do you want to start? And I'm like, I usually write back to people too, like, worst message ever, don't do that.
I don't write back anymore. I just block them. I sometimes try to inform them what SEO could do for their marketing.
Right. You sell them back, flip the script. I'd flip the script. Sounds good. I will tell you, though, that we found our setters and the people who we really work with well sales are the people who can actually get me on a meeting. I usually take it just so I can meet them and say, hey, would you like a job? If they can get me on a meeting, I'm like, I like how they did that, I'm going to hire them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's always a learning process there, right? For marketing automation, I think where I first heard about marketing automation was years ago with email marketing specifically. I think this was my first touch point with marketing automation. But my feeling is little has moved in the last years in terms of email marketing. Would you agree?
Email marketing is, I think, a very effective tool if done correctly. Once again, it's the value throw up again or value vomit. We don't actually do it because we just write them. So the group that, there's 1,000 or so people at any point we kind of want to meet. Our market's small enough where we just do the reach out ourselves. And the truth is, because there's a human element involved of the email. I feel like if you're doing automated emails where you're not maybe sending out, here's some podcasts that we did lately, or here's some videos that help you. It's once again giving. Here's some things that help you, and you're not selling them. I'm fine with that kind of automated email. But when you're doing the constant drip sign up, if you're a B2C or you're a high volume, that might make sense. But if you're a high ticket item or you're more B2B, I think it's really just annoying. And I think people end up just, it all goes to junk mail for me. There's very few that work. But if you got a human in the loop that picks it up when you reply, that might be okay, I think. But once again, human led, not full on automation. Unless you're doing B2C, then I'm all for it. Just mass do it and get people to get to your landing page and be done with it. But if you're high ticket or consulting or some kind of services, you're going to have humans involved. Humans buy from humans or committees of humans.
Absolutely. This reply definitely has been working for us really, really well. We just send out an email with an email software, but then get the reply. So we might have an automation after behind a lead magnet. It just sends out a sequence for us a few days later. But you have some sort of like human triggers where it's like, hey, if you want to know more or get on a call, something like this, hit reply, let me know what's going on or what's the main challenge or things like those. People very often reply to those emails. So I find this automated sequences for us definitely are working. But then, as you say, the earlier, especially in an environment where people need to trust you in order to trust the service, like in our case, for example, in SEO, it's definitely the case. The earlier you interact with them from human to human, the more trust is being built up. We do have the occasional people who are on our mailing list for 2 years, consume, and then after 2 years, suddenly something resonates with them and they say like, now we're ready, or now we have built this site up and are ready at a remedy level where we can engage an agency. But usually it's really where we get the most value out is definitely this human and human connection. But I can see the value of automatically getting in touch with people and starting those interactions, DMs. I was just on a call with a social media coach, and he's completely convinced that the direct messages are the most underused tool on social media. So everybody looking for followers and those vanity metrics, as you said before. But he's all for DMs. So the earlier you can send a direct message to someone you actually want to connect with, the better. Just to get 100%. This conversation going.
Yeah, no, 100%. So our notion of instantly relevant is nonstop relevance. And I have a firm belief you have to build trust and relevance in parallel to get a long-term loyal customer. And once you have trust and relevance, you have customers. They won't go anywhere else because they trust you and you're relevant at all times and they'll stay with you. The direct message is how we do it. So last year we could get hundreds of thousands of views on posts in LinkedIn. We knew how to trigger the algorithms to do it, but it wasn't producing much in the way of business. And then this year we would do maybe a few hundred views, maybe a few thousand views on some stuff, less views, less interactions, but the content and the hashtags views are very targeted and we get way more inbound effect from it. And once we see people like it or interact with it, then we're interacting with them. Like I'm having conversations with them or the team will via my accounts, right? That is super effective. But there's certain businesses that doesn't work for, right? At some point, if you're high volume, you're going to have to use automation. I like, by the way, when I say email automation, and I'd love to hear what kind of a tool that you like, what's the one you pick for that? Because there are a lot of choices. I agree with you on those offsets. If you're doing a sequence, I like those because I'm getting value and I've already established it. What I don't like are the endless, shameless buy email automations that are just like, get out of my inbox, right? The ones that add value or they're kind of give me a storyline or say, hey, listen, here's an article. Like I like those. That's good because I've signed up for that. But man, if you're selling on email automation, oh, gross. It's horrible. But
Yeah.
what is your what's your preferred email automation technology? I'm curious.
Switched around a little bit. So I have a technical background, so I also like tools. So we started out, I think the first tool was probably MailChimp. Like a lot of people start out with MailChimp. MailChimp, when I used it, didn't have automation. So this was quite a while ago. We then quickly discovered ActiveCampaign, which is also the tool we're using now. But in the meantime, we tested Ontraport, we tested ConvertKit, we tested one more, I can't remember right now, and then came back to ActiveCampaign because for our purposes, it really does the job. It's not overpriced like other tools out there. Delivery rates, etc., seem to be decent, and it really does the job. And then for really manual human-to-human connection, we use Pipedrive as a CRM, where we have all the information in there. And ActiveCampaign has a CRM, but I don't like it. It's not powerful enough. It's just really, you can move a few leads around. But Pipedrive for us is really the tool where we have one-to-one interaction, and I can track what's going on. I can track when relations start to cool down because we haven't been in touch for a while, etc. So this is what I really like for this one-on-one then.
Yeah, so you do all your emailing through Pipedrive. I like that. So we're a MailChimp house, but I'm selfishly asking you because we're about to move into what you just described of more value-added sequencing. I don't want to call it automation because people ask for it at that point, right? I like that you tried lots of amounts. You just saved me lots of time to have to go waste money in services. I'll stay where I'm at right now.
It's probably just hard to really figure it out. I mean, delivery rates very often seem to depend on the history you have with the tool and the tool with your emails and how people receive you. So if you have a good delivery rate, in my experience, on a software that does the job, switching might not be a good idea, or at least maybe you want to check if you get a similar delivery rate on another tool. So I've seen some people really drop in deliveries just because they switch tools. But yeah, ultimately, I think what I just really like is being able to have some automations, have some, like these flow diagrams where I can say, okay, if this is a client, send them this email. If this is not a client, send them another email. Probably only using like 5% of what ActiveCampaign could be doing, but these 5% are really, really helpful.
And the reason I ask, I know it's your podcast, but the reason I'm asking is because it ties to a bigger problem of tech fatigue. And in marketing in particular, there's so much technology you can leverage beyond Google Analytics, let's say, even on your site of who's on it. And I was on a meeting with a potential customer yesterday, and he's like, oh, I installed, and I can't think of the name of the tech. And he's like, hey, it picked you up, and it took data from like an email address I had like a decade ago, and it used like an old name of the. And it's amazing the technologies that could be leveraged behind. But I asked the guy, I was like, that's cool, but the data's wrong. So what do you do with it? So if it was pulling like all my modern data, I'm going to go sign up for that thing right now. So I know exactly who's on there, and that could be all, it's kind of creepy. But what I find when entrepreneurs and the people that are listening in your podcast for sure is there's so much of it. The email automation is like the biggest one. It took us 18 months to pick a CRM because some of them are way too much and some of them are way too little. And some of them are just so confusing. And Pipedrive is where the sales guys say, hey, that's the easiest one. But it takes forever. And I think just having a whole episode on core text to go use or an article is like the most handy set of information of you're setting your business up. Don't get tech fatigue, trying a lot of stuff. Just ask a couple experts what's working and stick with it. Because
absolutely, I think it's very often also related to obviously the shiny object syndrome, where I think, okay, everybody thinking what they are missing, and then you see a cool tool showing you what really cool automation, and they can send emails whenever somebody comes to your website, and we're on their email list, etc. And people think this is what they are missing. We're consistently working with like 40 projects or so. In my experience, there is always something deeper. That's the reason if your funnel isn't working. It's not that you're missing a particular feature, a particular tool might give you. And this is where I very often say, okay, pick whatever tool you want. Just let's make this work from a human who is going to buy it to a human who has presented this and put this in front of them. And we try to help with SEO to make sure there's a lot of the right people exposed to this. Ultimately, the tool, as long as the deliveries are okay and delivery rates, etc., it's ultimately the email that's going to decide if people are going to engage. And the more they engage with your email, the higher the delivery rates are going to be. So if people really start responding and really start looking for this interaction, the better it's going to work, and the less it's going to matter which tool you probably use.
Yeah, agreed. And as you think about AI and that leverage. I think this is actually somewhere AI does a really good job is on catchy titles, on catchy email headlines. This is where I think AI is excellent because there's no risk of plagiarism. You can get really catchy stuff that's trendy and it seems to be working. That's a very good use case. Even like just the titling of SEO and then also email. I think that's a very good use for AI, just to tie it back to some original tech. We do leverage that just to get some new ideas, to say it that way.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. I want to slowly tie this up, but if you think about someone, we'll work with a lot of course creators, e-commerce sites. If you pick a course creator, for example, what would be 3 tools or strategies with automation or AI you would suggest they should look into?
There's a few things, right? So, and I'm not promoting any one company over another, just to be fair, but this is what we're using. Fathom.video, we use them, it's free. And you can literally hit highlight on a button and it drops it into a CRM directly. It'll drop into a Slack channel. It'll take a summary of the last 30 seconds, summarize it with AI, and allow you to get clips to leverage really, a great way to create reels, shorts, TikTok videos, things like that, very quickly off of interviews you have, or get sound bites. It's like, hey, that was really cool what he said. Hit the highlight, it goes back and grabs it. I would definitely use that, because if you're in course creation or everything else, or e-commerce, it's a little different, but it's only on the social media side as you do interviews or testimonials. Great way to capture that. The simplest thing, also, honestly, if you're not using it, like a Calendly, and it's amazing people don't use these technologies still, but if you're scheduling, you have to use automation and all the workflows and the routing and all the stuff that goes with that. There's other ones out there. It's the one we use. And finally, the one I love, especially if you're in a course where it's maybe there's a bigger play you can have for coaching, use things like betterproposals.io. They are fantastic for allowing you multiple templates of building a beautiful proposal, tracking it, seeing if they've signed it, keeping your pipeline. And if you don't have a CRM, you just want a pipeline, you can do your whole pipeline through that. That's a really great technology. Probably doesn't benefit your e-commerce side as much for them. I would definitely just use the AI help on ad writing and leveraging. There's a lot of cool, there's too many to talk about now, but there's a lot of analytical tools for your ad development. You'd be the better expert for answering those probably, but I would definitely be using those, because some people still just kind of guess, right? And you shouldn't be doing that at this point.
Absolutely, especially the analytical point is where our software tries to come in, where we just say, okay, let's pick like the 2-3 KPIs from Google Analytics you actually need, and start working with those and actually implement, rather than trying to get more and more data, and it's not ultimately not actionable enough. And we did use Better Proposal at some point. I really liked it. I got it recommended from a client, a video production company in Melbourne. And this was a really, really nice tool when we still did like formal proposals to B2B companies, etc. Fathom Video, I'm going to check this out. I don't know this one. We do a lot of video editing still manually. So maybe this comes in handy for creating some short snippets.
Yeah, beautiful. They have a team edition too, which is great. I really enjoy it, because I think when you're doing podcasts in particular, as you hit the highlights, it helps the team then go write the articles and the follow-up and the posts, because you have it all captured of what with the highlight, and it speeds up their production time significantly. I think it's a high value active, high value. I think they just did like 4.7 million raise. They're a good company. By the way, I think you should check out the companies you're working with, because you want to make sure that they're going to be around. It's a good step to do and say, hey, is this company real? Is it kind of, because I've worked with a few and all of a sudden they disappear and you're like, what the?
Yeah, you could be using Twitter these days, and maybe they're not around tomorrow anymore. They should just shut down, right?
Twitter. I've never used Twitter. Not that I don't get it. There's too many bots on it. People didn't think there were bots on that.
Yeah. I've had a hard time with Twitter for many years as well. Yeah, actually. Let's see what comes out of this. Yeah, I really like this. I want to recap a little bit. So we talked about automation, really the human element, not AI, not replacing the human, but actually making things faster, which I think is the main point I definitely can stress, and also corresponds to my experience here at the agency when we work with clients. Just really see this as like a really cool tool you can now use to do things faster, or can do more of the same thing than you would be able to with a smaller team potentially, or just get a larger output. Really interesting that you essentially see the traditional issues with content creation that we also see with clients. My question here usually to clients is, how does content creation work for you? It's like a question on the first call, whether then explain, they just come up with something, they just write something, they don't have time to do it, they give this an assistant and the text is not correct. So lots of issues that very often AI can just speed this up a little bit, and especially when it's informed and you have a purpose for this and really know who this should communicate to is there. And we had social media trying to connect on an authentic level, giving, as you say, giving 3 times. I like this, made a note of this here as well. And giving not only means sending over some case studies, but really saying, okay, looking for this human interaction, looking for this conversation, direct messages, etc. And then really see what can you do with email marketing, with not go crazy on tools, but really find something that just works and leverage it. And then the 3 tools you just suggested, we're going to link to them over at seoleverage.com/podcast in our written summary, Fathom video, Calendly, Better Proposals AIO. I'm sure many people are going to check this out afterwards and see if this is something they can use. Anything else you would like to stress here when it comes to marketing automation we haven't talked about?
Yeah, anybody who's made it this far in the podcast, which I always joke in my podcast, I'm like 15 people that have listened, and the one that's here right now. One thing we focus on big with founders and people raising money or trying to get traction is we call executive eminence. And executive eminence is a combination of your personal brand image, your company brand image, your thought leadership, your messaging, your content and strategy. When you kind of put those things together in a real professional, thoughtful, holistic manner, your executive eminence is raised. And I've seen almost without fail, every founder that struggled to get their idea off the ground or raise money has a very poor set of presence across social media and online and everything they're doing. We help a lot of founders. That's called our launch program. And we help them get that so they are set up to look great. We raised money in our company the first week before we had a website or a logo, because my online presence was really good. And it was incredibly instrumental in raising money and getting traction initially. If you're missing this is my last piece of advice. If you're missing this, you must focus on getting your personal brand image, your company brand image, your thought leadership, content messaging, and your strategy right from day one. It doesn't take long, but you have to do it. You have to raise your executive eminence. It's going to pay dividends over time by doing it early in the season of your company or your entrepreneur journey.
Thank you so much. I hear this a lot where very often fundraising depends more on investors thinking based on the image they get from you if you're able to pull this off. Or
Definitely.
if they just have a lack of information because you're not out there, you're not putting things out there, you're not clear about your messaging, they might just turn it down, even if it's the greatest idea. Thank you so much, Thomas. Where can people go when they want to get in touch with you and learn more about this launch program and the marketing automation tools you use?
Yeah, absolutely. You can connect with me directly through instantly.relevant.com. The contact us brings you to a Calendly page, and it'll take you right to a one-on-one with me. So right now I still offer my time one-on-one to do that. And so if you book through instantly.relevant.com, you will find me and we can have a one-on-one conversation about you.
Awesome. We're going to link to it at seoleverage.com/podcast. This is episode 98. Thomas Helfrich, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a great conversation.
I appreciate it very much. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.